Welcome to the Hunter's Campfire. G'day, my name is Mark van den Bogart, hunter, fisherman, writer and storyteller. With me is Ian Hurley, technologist, hunter, hunting mentor and proud father. Together we want to help you get hunting. Our focus is helping you make the most of public land hunting right here in Australia, even if you don't live in a state where it's offered. This podcast series is all about helping you get started, helping you build your knowledge and your confidence so you can get out there and live your own hunting adventures. Now, let's get started. Okay, gentlemen, firstly, good evening to you, Ian, and good morning to you, Steve. And the reason why it is good morning is Steve is in the Midlands of the United Kingdom, which makes him our first international guest here on the podcast. So good morning to you, Steve.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good to see you. I'll lead off for a little while to probably link this story. Steve is actually a Queensland boy, and if I remember correctly, he's from Kingaroy or somewhere around that originally.
Yeah, Greater Darling Downs, mate. Brisbane, Kingaroy, Dalby area. Yeah.
So Steve and I first met at a fishing tackle store that Steve used to work at. And as these things happened, we started talking, and we both realised that we were both also into hunting. And we actually ended up hunting a couple of times together out the back of Toowoomba in past Dalby there, chasing pigs in crops. In fact, to be honest, the only time we actually ever got a pig was on the very first trip, on the very first night. We saw one in a crop field, and so we went out there a couple of times and hunted together. And then Steve made his way to the UK, or back to the UK, and we kept in touch. And since that time, every time I've gone over to England, of course, I've caught up, and we've also hunted together. So that's a little bit of an intro of how we got here today. So enough about that. So I'll hand it over to you, Steve. So like most of our guests, why don't you give us a rundown of your hunting life today?
Yeah, no worries, mate. Well, first of all, grew up in Vegas, in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia, and was a very fortunate position as a young lad to have family in the agricultural world and farming in different parts of Queensland. So my real home's just out past Dalby on the Dalby Kingaroy Road out there. And we had small hold operations and crop and livestock farms throughout Greater Queensland to the extent of a few 100,000 acres in total. So very fortunate to grow up in the city, I suppose, and have city schooling and what have you. And then the weekends were out on the farm. So no, that was my first introduction to hunting and in some ways fishing as well. Back then, I was again blessed to come from a reasonably rich hunting family, and as much as it was also a way of life in those times, especially on the land as well, controlling roo and pig populations. It's changed over the years, but no, that's basically where I come from, mate. So hunting's been pretty varied in Australia, or Australasia, I should say, and even more so since moving to the UK nearly 6 years ago now.
So, if I remember correctly, you when you're in Australia, this is always a topic of conversation, is that you didn't hunt deer or goat until you actually left the country.
Yeah, not a lot, mate. Goats in the early days, yes, we had goats on the block there, but I think a lot of the cockies, the goat value price at market rose so aggressively that no one wanted to shoot goats for a long time in Queensland. My family and families included in that. So not done a lot of goat shooting, to be honest. A little bit of deer in Queensland on the range there, but very little, mate. I didn't get into most of deer hunting until I came to the UK and Europe, to be fair. I again call it blessed, but we had pigs on the back doorstep, so there was always feral pigs were number one species for us, and as I say, different guises through kangaroo licensing over the last couple of decades and how that's changed. But I was involved in a bit of pro roo shooting there in the late 90s and early 2000s as well. But that take the enjoyment side out of it. That was there to do a job, if you like. That was the more industrial side of the hunting that I've been doing for a little while, mate. But yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I think I can probably count on half a hand how many people we've had on the podcast that Mark hasn't known through chasing pigs somewhere around the country. So welcome to Mark's group of pig hunting friends. And just so you know, I'm currently on the Darling Downs, so I live just south of Toowoomba, so I know the area you're talking about really well. I've been up here for it must be close to 15, 20 years now. So yeah, it's a lovely spot.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Can be harsh at times, and seen plenty of rough times out there over the years as well, and the floods and what have you. But plenty of droughts here and there. But yeah, look, it's the Darling Downs and the Granite Belt will always be home to me as such. So yeah, nice. Greater families from there. My father's side of the family is still, majority of them are still out there, and some of which still on the land. So yes, mate. As I say, as a kid growing up, I guess the benefits of the school, the city life, the school, and further education along the way, and then having the Downs and property in Queensland to play on at the weekends and holidays wasn't a bad place and way to grow up as a young fella. Yeah.
So you left Australia, went over to the UK, and that's where you picked up hunting as a hobby more than like you talk about being the industrial side of hunting. Now you're into the hobby side of hunting, I guess. Put it that way.
Mate, I think like a lot of us over the years, I think I've chopped and changed a bit between hunting and fishing at times. I, funnily enough, left school and I was able to start a school-based apprenticeship in the kitchen, actually. So chef by trade originally. So yes, mate, through the latter part of the 90s, I was finishing up high school and doing my trade as an apprentice chef. I went on and did a course in business and went to uni and ended up doing business and economics and hotel management for whatever reason. Well, it was part of the chefing thing at the time. So I after leaving school, I was able to which is about the time, similar time, I think 98, 99, my family sold the majority shares of their farms in the state, which coincided with me starting full-time work outside of college and also doing uni on the side, mate. And so yeah, further education sort of started there at that time, and as I say, we certainly hunted as kids, but it's a different kind of hunting that we know now.
For sure.
It was more, look, it's the hunting industry and certainly the fishing industry has evolved pretty heavily over the last couple of decades, and yeah, it wasn't so much a sport, if it's right to call it that back then, but it was a pastime, it was a way of life, and it's just a job that needed doing, if I'm honest. Yes, always, young fellas and out in the sticks and rifles, and that always interests me, like you lads, I'm sure. But so yeah, mate, I chopped a bit between fishing and hunting, and the era where I met Mark. Well, after I came out of the kitchens, I spent a couple of years in the kitchens and had the opportunity. I met my wife in Australia, actually, while we were doing a bit of travelling and working up on Fraser Island. It would have been in 2001. And long story short, but fell in love with an English lass and decided to move across the world, mate. So I moved across to England in 2001, well, actually to the Isle of Man, which was where her family was based at the time. And stayed in the kitchens at that time. So I was still cooking, and we were fortunate to part own or have an opportunity to go in with the Manx National Heritage and part own a restaurant, cafe restaurant on the west coast there. So yeah, we started relaunched this cafe restaurant, and yeah, it did good things over a couple of years, mate. And my visa, I was able to do limited hunting on the Isle of Man. To be honest, there's a bit more wing bird shooting and pheasant and partridge shooting, more so than game shooting as such. So yeah, we came back. Basically, my visa ran out over there, and Sally, my wife, and I decided that where we wanted to spend our lives, or the next stage of our lives at that time, and where we thought the best opportunity was to raise a young family, was back in Queensland. So in 2003, midway through 2003, I think it was, we moved back to Queensland and spent the next 10 years, decade there. And that's about that time I met Mark, I think it was. I couldn't tell you exactly, Mark. It's been a few moons go past since then, mate. But I worked in a prominent fishing tackle shop in Brisbane City, and that's where we first met, mate. So yeah, have always tried to keep in touch with hunting. I think when I was working in the fishing store in the early days there, it was fishing shops have changed a lot too. You know, hunting and fishing shops once upon a time were more combined destinations. You went to buy both goods, but they sort of separated in the early 2000s, and hunting shops became dedicated hunting shops, and fishing went its way as well, and with the odd exception, naturally, in your rural areas. But yeah, that's where Mark and I first met. So I'm off in the weeds a little bit here, but it's a long story. I've gone back and forth from the UK a couple of times, but yeah, a lovely 10-year period there working in the tackle industry as such, and behind the scenes worked with a few of the manufacturers and import companies as well. So yes, mate, I'm you know, we touched on earlier, I'm very fortunate, I suppose, to be able to make a career out of the hunting industry. Which has been nice, and as they say, you know, you don't work another day if you're getting up and doing something you love. So, and I've yeah, been able to turn fishing and hunting into a reasonable career over the last nearly 17 years now.
So last time you went back over, that's when you and I had, you know, met. You moved back to the UK, and you actually, if I remember correctly, you got a pretty good opportunity to move into the industry over there.
Yeah, absolutely. When we moved back to the UK, yeah, 5 going 6 years ago, it's I'd finished. While I say the trades are different, many of the import wholesale companies import in Australia and also the UK import both fishing, hunting, and general outdoor, you know, goods. So I did know a few people in the trade over here, and at that time there were a couple of companies, one relatively in its infancy in the UK that was started up from an Australian company, and I'm here now, Highland Outdoors, and the second was a company called Ray Trade. So when I first moved to the UK, I was yeah, fortunate enough to get in touch, or Josh Raymond, I should say, reached out to me, the owner of Ray Trade, and yeah, told me all about this opportunity and a new business that they were branching out into the UK industry and trade, and setting up a facility at that time. And yeah, we're looking for a couple of blokes on the road to yeah, get it up and going, mate. So I was very fortunate, right time, right place, if you want to call it that. To I actually, yeah, long story short, had a job with a sister company to one of the fishing businesses I worked for back in Australia. So that's what I was coming over here, and I had that interview the day after my interview at Ray Trade. So for one reason or another, decided I'd been on the fishing side of the industry for that decade prior to leaving Australia, and I was ready for change. It's fair to say, and yeah, it was a wonderful opportunity at the time, I guess, to, as a lad, you know, coming across from the other side of the world, to join the hunting industry. And I think you know, anyone out there that's interested in joining the trade will possibly have found out it's not the easiest industry to get into, if I'm honest. It's you know, it is a big industry. It's a big pastime for a lot of people out there, but it's still very much a cottage industry as well. And oftentimes, who you know is you know, helps getting into the trade as such. But like, you know yourself, you know, how many positions do you see for, you know, sales representatives in hunting and fishing tackle? Because I know if you put that advert in the paper in Queensland, mate, you'd have blokes knocking your door down for a crack at it. So yeah, you're right in saying that when I first came to the UK, I was very fortunate to have a couple of opportunities to get into the industry over here, and it was something I loved. And yeah, went on and worked a stint at Ray Trade, and yeah, just finished as the general manager of that business at the start of COVID. So I was there a little over 4 years, and we started started from a small shed in a nice part of the country down in Hampshire on a private estate, and grew it into yeah, one of the 5 largest import wholesale companies in the UK trade. So yeah, it continues to do good things down there, and yeah, good bunch of guys. They've due to the brands that they import, they've had a fair shake up the last couple of years. The Remington agency was always one of their biggest, and there is and have been a lot of changes to that Remington umbrella group, if you want to call it that. So no, but they're doing their thing now. And when COVID broke, an opportunity came up to move to Highland Outdoors. So I'm located in the Midlands here in the UK, and if you look at a map of England, basically put a spot right in the middle, and that's about where we are. The office at Ray Trade was down in Hampshire, so a little over a 2-hour commute each way each day. So which after a few years starts to pay its toll a little bit. And It's fair to say too that the first couple of years I was there, I was actually on the road. So I ran half the UK, the southern area sales. So yeah, it was coming from another country, I suppose, is a lovely way to get to meet people, and all of a sudden you're out there servicing the requirements of all the gun shops in the country. So, you're talking about the things you love and meeting a whole new network of folks out there, and with it comes opportunities and friendships to boot. So, no, look, a lovely way for me to settle in as much as anything, and yeah, open my eyes to the hunting and fishing opportunities that are over here. But no, I'm off in the weeds a bit. Since moving, an opportunity at the start of COVID last year. COVID impacted the UK pretty heavily in March, April of last year, and look, easy to sit back and criticise the way the government's gone about it, and this isn't about that. We don't need to talk about that now, but look, changes were forced on a lot of businesses. A lot of people didn't know which direction, their trades and industries were going, and literally everything came to a grinding halt. And when you got a country the size of the UK that fits in Australia many, many times landmass size, and you fill it up with 68, 69 million people, you got a lot of people in a small little area not knowing what's going on. And it was challenging, mate. So aside from that, the general manager, well, the now CEO of Highland Outdoors, is a gent by the name of John Bright. And Bright, he's very well known in the Australian gun trade. He ran the business Highland Sporting in Australia for many years, and he had the opportunity a few years prior to me coming over to come and set up, this business here in the UK. John and I have been friends for 16, nearly going 17 years now, and I've certainly, David and John Fuller, met them first at trade shows, fishing trade show about eight or 9 years ago. So the business has not been unfamiliar to me, shall we say, and we've always had a friendly rivalry. So the guys had tried to get me across to work for them a couple of times, and I think with COVID, how things were going, and our latest wife and I had our youngest daughter at that time too, when the COVID was going crazy. The opportunity was there, and I made the jump across to Highland, mate. So I'm now only just over 15 minutes from home, and in what I believe will be the UK's premier import wholesale company in the next 18 months. So
when you talk about 2 hours each way in traffic, mate, that's 2 hours each way in UK traffic too, which is just, we've got no concept of traffic till you get there.
I certainly don't. I have about, I don't know, if I was even to bother going to the office on a day, I might have 2 sets of traffic lights, and I'm not sure I'd really have to stop at either of those.
Yeah. So no, look, it's challenging, and look, COVID just threw a spanner in the works basically with all business, but I most certainly don't use that as an excuse. It's a wonderful opportunity I've had that presented now nearly 16 months ago since I've joined Highland Outdoors. How time flies, but it's so far we've done some great things in the industry, but I'll always look back on that time that I had at Ray Trade there very fondly. It's not often you get an opportunity to fly across the world into the great unknown, and someone offers you a job doing something you love, and a means to meet the industry and the trade over here, and become deeply entrenched in that, I guess. And it's good times, really, really good times. So I talk about a 2-hour drive to and from work. People ask you, how do you do that, especially in the dark and in the rain and in winter? Well, I guess if you love it enough, and you really want to stamp your mark on the game, then you got to put in the hard yards. So there was a few years of that. And I'm very grateful for it, and do look back on it very fondly. But life marches on. I guess opportunities come for all of us, and
Yeah, in the lead up to this, you talked about how the industry was, it's busy again, right? So it's your busiest time. You've got some things going on in the background, but why has it all of a sudden become busy? Have there been some things going on with COVID restrictions easing? Is it just people getting used to life again? Is it naturally a busy time? What's going on over there that's made this such a busy period?
Yeah, a little bit of all that, mate. So you've got yeah, most certainly. Look, the impact of COVID drew a lot of hunters couldn't travel beyond their, immediate boundaries, shall we say. Now, some of that was drawn up as your county line. It was very difficult to cross county lines there when COVID was at its peak and we're in lockdown. You had to be able to justify why you were out there shooting or hunting at the time, and it had to be a pretty fair justification, or you risk the losing your license. So yeah, look, it's fair to say very few people had the opportunity to do a lot of hunting over that 12-month period when COVID was in its height. So I think now that certainly the COVID guidelines have relaxed somewhat. Yes, naturally. Everyone's been tied up and wanting to get out there and do some hunting. Absolutely. It also coincides with the northern hemisphere hunting season really kicks off at the roebuck rut, which is May, June, July, just depending on where you are from Europe's side, and likewise in the US. So the second half of the year tends to be where our hunting season goes pretty good. Starting to talk about the fall or autumn months and through winter is primarily when we're all deer stalking and hunting our deer. So yeah, it's naturally with Christmas time and what have you as well, you've got the retail shops are stocking up pretty heavily in the run up to Christmas time and Black Friday, which I still can't get my head around. Once upon a time, an American thing that seems to have gone global these days, and it's massive sales, and it's really shaken up the trade in Europe, especially over the last couple of years. So we're in the midst of that. Black Friday sales started today here in the UK and Europe. So yeah, mate, you've got a few things like that have all happened at the same sort of time. That's led to everyone pretty busy. I think businesses have opened back up. Customers are allowed back in retail stores without many COVID guidelines now. So your high street stores done it pretty tough over the last couple of years, especially the non-essentials like hunting and fishing shops. It's a bit different to the supermarkets. I mean, they've made hay while the sun was shining as such during the peak of the period. So I think they all reported record sales across your supermarkets, but in grocery chains. But yeah, the old high street hunting shop that's often multi-generational in its second, third generation now did it pretty tough with their doors all but closed for a period of 6 to 7 months in different blocks throughout that 12 months. So yeah, mate, it's nice to see doors back open. It's nice to see everyone back out and enjoying the outdoors again and back out and doing some hunting at what's coming into the prime time for our season here.
Speaking of that so having the opportunity hunting with you over in the UK a few times, I mean, I've seen the differences firsthand, but I'm sure that you've seen, lots of different interpretations of what hunting is, especially from starting from, as you said, basically pest destruction in rural, Queensland to what hunting looks like in the UK. So it'd be really quite interesting to get your take on what hunting is all about in the UK and the different types and where people can get into hunting if they're visiting or like yourself, they're thinking about moving over there.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Look, I think it's fair to say that hunting, certainly in England, it's been deeply entrenched in their history for many times. So it's been a huge part of the English countryside and the UK countryside even further. But so I mean, there's always been a very rich, hunting population and in the UK. Although these days licensing and that it's not the easiest place on the planet to own firearms, if I'm absolutely honest. And I'll throw a couple of stats at you because it'll give you a rough idea. We talked about the population there before, round figure, let's call it 68 million in the UK versus, I don't know what Australia's currently at now, 25 something, 25 million. Well, there's more licensed firearms holders than there are in Australia than in the UK, believe it or not. So we've, the licenses in the UK work two different ways. So you've got a shotgun certificate, which is a lot easier to obtain, not too dissimilar to home in Australia in the sense that you need to have security for your firearms within your house, and that's inspected by the police here, and you go through a basic application to acquire a shotgun basically, and it's it's a lot easier to obtain from that sense, but also because the justification for having a shotgun is quite simply that you want to go and shoot clays at your local clay ground on the weekend and what have you. So, which is very, very accessible in all counties across the UK. And for that reason, I think I had a brief look at the end of last year. I think shotgun certificate holders in the UK were about 600,000, 620,000. But then you talk about firearms, so let's call that a rimfire rifle or centerfire rifle as such. We've only got 136,000 license holders in the UK from a population of 68 million. So it's
that's incredible.
It is densely populated, and that's one of the reasons it's tough to get a firearms license. But 168,000 makes it one of the smaller of all the major Western countries. It makes it one of the smallest license holders per capita out there. So yeah, with that in mind, the industry or hunting opportunities for people living in the UK are far greater on the shotgun side. So if you want to break down sporting clays or different clay shooting disciplines, there are numerous grounds in every county around the UK that are really accessible and really great for the youth to get into, and a lot more ladies entering that side of the sport too, which has been fantastic. And supporting that predominantly, look, you can clay shoot year round, of course, but in the middle of winter time, you haven't got sun up till 9:30. Most grounds won't open till about 11 due to noise restrictions. And then they're shut again by 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So reasonably limited time through winter. So the majority of your sporting clays and clay grounds are open for 8 or 9 months of the year, basically, and again they are predominantly through that spring and summer period. So we're just seeing the end of clay season now, and a lot of people, it's fair to say, a lot of keen game shooters shoot clays to keep their eye in for the game season, which has just kicked off in the last couple of months, depending on your species. But we have grouse that start in early August these days. So you've got different disciplines in your grouse, driven grouse or walked up grouse as such. And then our pheasant and partridge shooting as well in the UK is very well known for its driven shooting. So that's the side of I guess that goes back to the old English days, the kings and what have you in the past have always been pretty keen on their driven shooting, and it's a way of involving the whole local community into a day's sporting, if you like, and that's still widely received around a lot of the country, and unfortunately coming under pretty heavy criticism at the moment as a sport as such. So yeah, that's the shotgun side of the season. As I say, the industry is very much divided into two. You either shoot rifles and rimfire or target shooting, or you're shooting shotguns, be it clay or bird shooting of some sort. And I skipped over the wildfowl season there too. We've got a very good wildfowl industry in the UK as well. Relatively limited season, but kicks off in September type time, and it does kicks off in September. And there's good wildfowl opportunities and shooting right around the UK, both foreshore and inland. And then on the rifle side of the industry, or the hunting side, as we'd better know it, I think your medium-bodied game, so 6 deer species in the UK, the majority of licensed shooters. Backtrack again. The majority of licensed firearms shooters in the UK are probably shooting foxes and rabbits, to be honest, smaller caliber and varmint caliber stuff, and controlling the foxes for the driven shoots is a huge chore, and most people with a rifle over here at some stage will be spending a fair bit of time out late at night controlling the fox populations when your birds are in their rearing stage and ready to release for the season. And in addition to that, you've got the deer stalking side. Now, I'd hazard a guess at that 120 odd thousand or whatever licensed rifle holders. You really only have a few thousand that are active stalkers in the UK. So deer stalkers, and with the 6 species that are available, you got your red deer, seeker deer, and fallow deer, and we've got our muntjac deer, roe deer, and Chinese water deer are your 6 species. Of those, look, they all vary in their seasons between bucks or stags and does and hinds, but there are opportunities for folks in the UK to be able to shoot their 6 deer species each season, even providing they've got access to the land, and that's probably the trickiest part for locals is gaining access to the land with that many people in a relatively small area, and most deer population, most of the counties around the countryside that have good deer populations aren't aren't necessarily that big, and you know, they're small hold properties, as Mark's had the opportunity to see a couple of times. But no, I'm rambling on a bit. There are good opportunities, I suppose, to shoot all your deer species. We do have foxes, we do have rabbits and hares as well, and then the driven side of the industry on your birds. Yeah.
And how easy is it, or how difficult is it for a visitor to get involved? Like, do you know the process for someone like myself that heads over there for a holiday with the family to go and, you know, potentially chase some of these species that we don't have here in Australia?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or any of them, for that matter.
Yeah, look, no different to travelling to most, well, EU countries, mate, in the sense that it's a little trickier if you're wanting to bring your own firearm at the moment. And since Brexit, that's offered up a few more challenges as well, carrying that throughout the UK and Europe. But if you were to step off the plane with the family on a holiday and want to do a little bit of hunting, yeah, you'd be heavily reliant on the services of an outfitter or guide, to be honest. Yeah. Yep. So, or you know, same again, a primary industries landholder who might have a firearms certificate or license, and you could go under instruction and shoot on their land. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Not a lot dissimilar to someone travelling to Australia from abroad as well. So, providing you're with the appropriate licensed holder at the time and under their supervision. Yeah. We don't have any public land hunting opportunities in the UK currently, it's fair to say. So all the hunting is divided up onto either private land or the Forestry Commission. And the Forestry Commission often lease out the land to syndicates. So it is possible for anyone moving to the UK and wanting to get into hunting to join a local syndicate that might be in their area. Typically the syndicates have between 8 and a dozen people on them. And they operate on, on properties from 600 to a few thousand acres in size. And it's not too dissimilar to the way you would register if you were going public land hunting as such in Australia. So it's divided up. You would let the syndicate person who runs the syndicate know that, when you would like to go into the block and when you'll be hunting, and they'll control who's in there at any one time and divide it up. Not too dissimilar to how you guys go down the Pilliga and places like that. It's a similar sort of system in that sense. But no, travelling from abroad, there are good shooting opportunities. Probably easier on the shotgun side, to be honest. It's much easier to pick up a day's driven shooting or a day's walked up shooting in your local area than it is on the rifle side for deer. But no, mate, if the desire's there, you can make it happen. Yeah.
Very good.
Certainly, I mean, I can attest to that because I think my wife has finally figured out that's one of the reasons I did like hunting every couple of years, because about 6 months out, the emails would start, okay, we're going to arrive on this date, let's start planning, and we'd be, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And both wing shooting with shotgun and also rifle shooting for deer is something that I've greatly enjoyed. I think one of the things that most people would find really interesting is that the idea that heavily, densely populated in the way that they've approached noise. So basically in the UK, your rifle is suppressed. It's kind of the opposite. It has to be suppressed, as opposed to what we regard here as an open rifle. That's actually a no-go in the UK in most cases. Isn't that right, Steve? It's actually got to be suppressed, or in most cases it does. Yeah.
Yeah, certainly does, mate. It's the norm, put it that way. So all rifles, 99% of rifles from factory all come threaded into the UK market. So everyone sets up when you apply for a new slot on your license or to acquire a new firearm. You also apply for a moderator, sound moderator, silencer, suppressor at the same time for that firearm. So yeah, it's definitely recommended. More pleasant for the average person with felt recoil to shoot as well, and more pleasant on the hearing, and also, like you say, with the dense populations. Wandering out at 5:15 in the morning on your local farm and letting rip with a 300 Win Mag unsuppressed is not recommended. So you may not be welcome back there next time.
It blows my mind that you go around the world and different governments have such different ideas about that subject. I mean, it'll turn us all into ninjas. That's why we're not allowed in. We'll all be running around in the dark with our suppressed firearms, doing bad things. I don't care.
Look, until the professional user group in Australia continues to press from the hearing and that side of it, I don't think you're going to see too many changes. I hear rumours at the moment that we might see some relaxing or changes to policies in different states from next year. But we'll see, mate. It absolutely dumbfounds me what the government over there thinks a suppressor does. I think it makes the thing silent or something like that. I don't know, but it just, for anyone that's not shot one on a moderate-sized centerfire cartridge, it just knocks the crack out of it. That's all it really does. Still goes bang like a normal rifle, just not at dangerous levels to one, your ears, or two, other people using the countryside. So no, it's Sorry.
I think it's really that idea is other people. That's one of the great challenges that I've always. It's taken me a little while to get you. Every time, even takes you a little while to realise how close to the public you are when you're either wing shooting or rifle shooting. It's all in a very confined space. I remember the first time I ever wing shot in the UK, we were shooting pigeons from a blind, and we were literally behind a church, and we were, it was like the church was 200 meters away. You could hear the bells ringing. You could see the people going into the church, and we're sitting there, and there was people walking the dogs behind us, and you just that proximity to other people. And that last farm shoot we did, when we did the big walk for the day, and there was that one time where we came around the corner, and up there was a golf course, and over there was the motorway, and we were walking, there's 12 guys with shotguns just walk along the side of the motorway, and it's just a really different feel, the way that the idea of space and how everyone is very, very close to each other. So, you realize the importance or the value of a suppressor there, because you are right next to other people. It's like it'd be basically like if there was a dog walking track between the benches and the shop there at Belmont Rifle Range. It's like that.
Yeah, definitely. And farmers have zero control on their land over the public footpaths that go through them. That's important to note too. So you can, quite often it's not uncommon to be stalking in, especially roe deer, and especially in the rut time when the lads are out chasing the ladies around the middle of what at the time tends to be freshly cut fields, because they're normally bailing about that same sort of time. It's not uncommon for you to be on the sticks or trying to make your final approach into a road buck, and have a walker and a dog walk straight through the middle of the field, and you just got to down tools and sit away. So consideration for other people using the countryside is paramount, and it's the fastest way to get yourself into trouble. So when you talk about suppressors, I think it's that too. It is. They're most definitely more considerate for all other users that are out there in the outdoors. And as Mark says, so densely populated, and the small holds or farms tend to be on average a lot smaller than what we're used to in Australia. Now that's got its benefits as well, I suppose. And look, knowing the property that you're on, the boundaries, where the public access areas are, is critical. It's a must do. And a lot of instances you'll see a lot more high seat shooting as well, or hunting from high seats. And that's not just because European people are lazy by nature. That's also that one, they're set up in prominent locations, but two, if you start thinking about your angles, a shot that either passes through a beast or misses and straight into the ground obviously has less chance of ricochet when it's coming from a steep angle at relatively close distance. So you will see more high seat hunting happens in more dense populations, neighbouring cities and what have you. But just very different, certainly different to the 16 odd thousand acres I grew up on and still call home these days. It's the backstop is still critical, and you're looking for one all the time. But it's unlikely that in the path of that might also be 2 or 3 towns, cities, a football ground, and a McDonald's. So yes, mate, I'm conscious at all times of where you're hunting, most definitely. But again, the flip side to that is, I guess, hunting opportunities I found in the UK off the whim or off the cuff can be a lot easier because it's a lot easier to access. You can knock off work in summertime and within minutes be from your workplace to the ground that you're stalking on, and stalk roebucks in the evening for an hour or two after work. So very, it's as opposed to certainly anyone living in the city, and I speak predominantly of Queensland at home, but if you're in Brisbane City, you know, it's a bit of a hump out to the country until you're starting to get into some reasonable hunting areas, or where you might want to go, you know, camping and hunting for a weekend. And there's a bit more time putting into preparation for the trip and packing down and what have you afterwards. So we are fortunate where the majority of the year round, a rifle lives under my desk, unloaded and safe, I'll point out, while I'm at work. And should the opportunity present for 45 minutes on the way home, I can just stop with a set of sticks and go for a wander around a couple of fields and see what's poking about. So I guess, horses for course, you know, pros and cons, but no, it's different. It's certainly different to rural Australia, shall I say.
And that's very true. So I remember actually when you were down in Hampton there, that first afternoon we went out, like, we didn't really even need to take the car. We could have walked out of the driveway and across the track, but we drove for some reason. I don't know, maybe because we had the new car at the time. We just wanted to check it out or something. But literally, we came out of the driveway, down, pulled over, and said, "Okay, we're into it." And then, you know, literally, you could still see your office window from where we started hunting, and that was, you know, that was an amazing experience. Just literally, okay, we're on, let's go. And sure enough, we saw deer straight away. Of course, they were roe deer at the time, so they were out of season, but they were there. And that was the first time I actually saw a muntjac. I went over to hunt muntjac, and I'd never actually seen one in the flesh, and that was that first afternoon, literally within inside of your office, we saw that first muntjac. And the other interesting thing is sticks, you know, shooting off sticks. Again, that's very much the norm, isn't it, over in the UK?
Oh, definitely. And look, much like South Africa too, Mozambique, and that, you are heavily reliant on, you know, being efficient off a set of sticks. Yeah, definitely. Without the opportunity isn't always there or afforded to be able to lay down and get on a bipod. You don't always have a tree or something you can lean on either. So I guess for any, like, what we would call lowland stalking, or the stalking we've done, markets, most definitely beneficial to have a set of sticks. And majority of people practice on sticks regularly, and most of your shots, if you're deer stalking throughout a season, would happen off a set of sticks. Yeah. I guess it's important for me to note too, what my comments about earlier about, you know, the population and hunting and what we've just talked about, that differs very drastically once you get up past the borders and into Scotland. So hunting Scotland's a lot more like hunting New Zealand and Australia. They're planned trips away. You're into, you know, vast patches of environment. You're up on the bends, up on the hills and the cliffs and the mountain ranges up there. So yeah, a lot more like, you know, hunting the ranges in New Zealand or even Queensland in some places. So yeah, a bit different up there. And yeah, something I'd recommend if you ever get the opportunity and you're over to go and shoot a red stag in Scotland's pretty special.
Yeah, last time I was over there, we headed through to Skye, and that valley on the way through to the Isle of Skye is just stunning. And we stopped, I don't know how many times we stopped, because we saw, you know, herds of deer heading up through there. They're just along the roadside, you know, off into the paddocks and things like that. And I thought, oh, well, I've heard that this is all the land off the side of the road. It's actually not private land. It's part of the Crown land, or whatever you'll call it over there, for maybe a few hundred meters back until you get to a fence line. So I thought, oh, we'll just pull the car up here, and we'll take the camera out, and we'll trudge on up there and see how close we can get to some of these stags and take some nice photos. Well, man, was I in a bog of wet, mushy shit pretty fast up there. we were very well stuck in there, and we were on foot. But it was pretty funny. But the stags were spectacular. Just what you could see off the side of the road was just unreal.
Oh, absolutely. And look, Skye's a heck of a destination and growing in popularity each year. So there's a definite sort of pilgrimage of blokes from the south here that go up there each year for the season. I've returned. There's a group of us that always go up to Scotland every year for the stags, and we've just only returned a couple of 3 weeks ago. And yeah, look at Scotland even in itself. You've got your lowland or forestry stags, and then you've got up on the open hill or the bens as they call them up there. Look, anything in Scotland that starts with a ben is a bloody big hill, and you'd want to have your boots and gear up to the scratch. So it's yeah, some interesting country up there. And when you get your forestry blocks, especially your uncut forestry blocks up on the side of the hills, it's the toughest going I've ever had for hunting, mate, because you're one, it's bloody hilly and that's hard work and it takes it out of you, but two, the underfoot never gets an opportunity to dry out, so you're constantly mid-shin deep marching through bogs and heather bogs and peat bogs and you name it. So it's tough going, but it's also some of the most rewarding hunting I've done as well. So watching stags on daybreak, round up their hinds and get ready to push them back into the timber up on the hill is pretty special. So yeah, see them roaring in first light in the morning, and your good hinds your good stags are often holding north of 30 and 40 hinds on their own up there, and word cut out for them, and to watch them bellowing and roaring on the sun up, mate, as they're trying to push all the hinds back into cover is pretty special. So yeah, it's a nice place, lovely people, very accommodating, very used to traveling hunters from around the world as well. So yeah, it's a good season, and Seeker deer becoming more and more widely spread up through the borders and into Scotland now as well. And with that has brought a bit of a hybrid line, if you like, that's less desirable, shall we say. But it's if you've never stalked Seeker deer, hearing a Seeker deer call or squeal just on daybreak is something that's absolutely spine shivering stuff. They can get you. It's like someone's walked over your grave, mate, when you hear them. And of all the deer I've stalked, they're by far the most intelligent as well. They're pretty crafty deer, to the extent of a recent. We were hunting a corner of a forestry block, if you want to call it that, and it had a couple of nice rides cut in it. And we're at the junction of these rides, and probably the box is about 140 yards, big deer box up in the air, back from the junction of this ride. And funny, a little Seeker stag. He had nice Seeker stag, had two young fellas with him, and he stopped. I had him on the binoculars. He stopped just about 5 yards inside the heavy cover, and could just make him out. Had a thermal on me too, late afternoon. Could just make out he was there, and he sent the two young stags out across the ride first. Sent them across, and they very tentatively walked across the ride. He came out right to the edge of the tree, turned his head, and looked straight up at the deer box. Turned back and back into the timber and away. Now, I don't know, mate. I don't know if they were that intelligent, but they knew something. He knew something wasn't quite right, and he's out of there. But yeah, to hear them squeal at that time of day is absolutely sends shivers up your spine. So yeah, nice opportunity, and the little known Irish Seeker herd is growing in popularity globally, and it's one of the nicest places you can go and hunt Seeker stags these days is in Southern Ireland at the moment. A little different over there to they only in mainland UK as well, in the sense they do get out on the hill more like reds. But yeah, look, a lovely deer, but just starting to come out of season for reds and Seekers at the moment. So your red season for the stags in Scotland's finished now. They're onto the hinds up there, and England runs a slightly different season on our lowland stags. But a wonderful place, as I say. If anyone's really into their deer stalking and is venturing over to the UK, I can't highly recommend enough. They try and come during a red stag rut up in Scotland. It's pretty special.
I remember sitting in that hot seat. Probably I think it's the first time I'd ever been in that kind of position, sitting up in that seat on that big property down there in Hampshire that we're on. And we were in a couple of them, and when that afternoon we were on that one of the ones looking over a vehicle track. One of the things that you don't realise, I would suggest to anyone who's thinking about it, is how cold it gets in a hot seat when you're just sitting there not moving. Man, that was cold. That's one of those points where I remember that cold for a while. It just kind of sat on top of you. You were sitting there, you're not moving much. You're trying to keep your concentration up, and it's midwinter. It's not snowing, but boy, was it cold up in those seats. And that was something, because I remember, I think we were there with Richard, and he kept on saying, oh, take this, wear this, wear there. And I was like, Michelin type thing, going, what the hell am I going to do that? 10 minutes up in there, okay, I understand now.
Yeah, it's funny you said that we might think of you guys as lazy European hunters. I think you're the most incredibly patient people out there to be able to sit up on those stands in the cold. I don't know if I could do it. I like to spot and stalk.
Excuse me. Yeah, it's look, coming from our background and hunting at home, I like to move to, even for a big lad. I like being on the hill and moving, to be honest. But it's not my idea of hunting. But I as we touched on earlier, due to some of the locations and populations and where these herds are that need controlling, they're often on the side of the property Mark spoke of. Then it's a large property, private property, owned by some royalty down in the south of England, and there's nearly I think there's nearly 7,000 acres there or thereabouts, but its borders, two of its borders are major motorways. And you've got a herd of a few hundred deer on that block as such that need controlling. And so unfortunately, it is a means of control. It's most definitely not my favourite way to hunt. And each season, to be honest, unless we're culling fallow deer come January, February type time, we'll do everything I can not to go and sit in a high seat, to be honest. I'd rather go for a wander and stalk a muntjac in the woods or something like that for a couple of hours at dusk or dawn than sit up in the high seat. But look, with that comes other opportunities for the less able people to still be able to enjoy their hunting as well. It's a great way to teach new people to the sport too. Get them up in a high seat in an environment that largely you can control what's going on. So yeah, as I say, pros and cons. But no, when the breeze is up and it's winter time, you'd want to be rugged up, or you're going to get a bit cool up there, guys.
Yeah, it's interesting. There must be a fairly, I call it dense population of animals to be able to, put a high seat up there. And I'm not going to say guarantee it, but you see a lot of stuff on YouTube, be it the US or in the UK, people up in the high seats, and they're seeing the deer fairly frequently, so they know they're around. A lot of the places that we hunt, you can go to blocks that are, 100,000 hectares, not bump into a deer. They're there, but you might not see them. You're probably not going to sit in a high seat for too long just because the population is not so dense. Or is that just the magic of YouTube and various other platforms? How often do you sit in a high seat and see nothing?
Yeah, look, classic YouTube and Facebook. You only see the successful hunts, pardon me. Yep, but look, that said as well, the US, a lot of the time, high seats are often used over baits too, which is fair to say. Which brings a whole different element. Not done like that here in the UK, but look, in certainly areas, so high seat shooting, there's not a lot of it done for your sika, your red deer, to be honest. It's often a means of southern parts of the UK controlling the fallow deer. Yes, you see muntjac from your high seats, definitely, but Chinese water deer, another one you don't tend to shoot from a high seat as such. They're always stalked. But yeah, it's look, mate, you have your days when the fallow numbers are up and you've drawn a prominent high seat. There might be a few of you out culling. You can have the whole herd move through there. You can see 70, 80, 150 animals over a couple of hour period that are passing through the block. When you're controlling in that environment, you'll often have maybe a dozen or 15 high seats and hunters up in them for an afternoon, and you'll be trying to, between you, move the deer around that particular block and thin down the numbers or remove what you're trying to from the herd. And you draw a bad seat and you sat up there for 4 hours and seeing nothing but squirrels and leaves, mate. So
and hearing people having a good time.
Yeah, exactly right. So look, used predominantly by a lot of us that love our active stalking. The high seats are used predominantly just for culling at that time of year where you need to get on top of the fallow.
Yeah, okay.
I've always, my experience is I've always seen deer when we've gone out. Not always got deer, but certainly seen deer. I mean, every time we went out, even one of the high seats, and one of the high seats we saw fallow. The other high seat we did see a roe deer, saw a muntjac each time. So, and I mean, I think that one morning we went out, we stumbled into a fallow herd, and I remember that we're coming through the trees, and there was just deer everywhere. They were just running, They were all over us, and they were close. So that I think too. Also, that's I suppose that's whilst there's a massive, or a very high level of density in terms of human density, smaller block, big deer herds, you can get quite a high density in the deer numbers as well, and that's why, of course, fallow are culled so heavily as they are. Because we went out on a hunt once. We actually went out with a couple of cullers. They took us out. They weren't culling that particular day, but we went out. And I think you shot a couple of fallow. I shot one fallow, and that's what they were. They were professional cullers, and they were shooting mostly with handheld thermals. Shooting off sticks with suppressors, and the idea was just to flatten those numbers. So they were just like we do here with pigs and goats and other animals. They're there to flatten those deer numbers.
Yeah, you can break that side of the game down into probably three sectors. You've got your forestry commissions that are all around the UK, widely spread. And, the forestry commission primarily there is to maintain the forest and control that environment and which timber's been taken out of there. And each of those prominent forestry blocks around the country normally have a forestry commission deer stalker that's associated with it to control the numbers in those forests in their region. So you've got, I couldn't tell you in total, but there'd have to be over 100 forestry commission stalkers just in the UK that work for Forestry England. You've then got the two chaps that Mark just mentioned. You've got contract shooters that contract to different divisions of the forestry, both England and Scotland, who these blokes were. And a lot of guys often do that as their second job. So they have their day job and then work as a commission stalker on the weekends, or turn their stalking more so into another opportunity to make a bit of money as well while they're out in the countryside. And then you've got your average weekend hunter and stalker, so that enjoys it. But it's probably worth noting too. There's in the UK and certainly parts of Europe, Germany's probably the most difficult to get your license to shoot a lot of game, be that boar and deer. But here in the UK, we've got an opportunity to do our DSC1 course, as they're called. It's a certification in a deer course, and if you've attended and passed that course, that also gives you your basics into food hygiene and allows you to sell the carcass and enter that into the food chain as well. So for a lot of blokes that are pretty keen stalkers and enjoy doing it, they'll often do their DSC1 and 2 courses, 2 different levels there. And it's basically just a hunter certification that you know what you're looking for. Are you harvesting the right animal? You can identify any issues that the animal has, whether that's in nodes or physical appearance, and whether that carcass is safe then to put into the food chain. You then tag that and sign that animal off, grellic it, and then you've got the opportunity to sell that into your meatworks plants or into what we know as game dealers over here. The game dealers then, either export that carcass over into Europe predominantly, or it goes back into the butcher cycle here in the UK and goes out to UK butchers. So I guess from that sense, it's easier for blokes to turn hunting into not only their pastime, but a means of being able to, pay for that new rifle or that new fancy bit of glass that they're using by putting a bit of carcass back into the food cycle and chain. So and that predominantly is done through fallow time, and that's where all the forestry commission stalkers that I just spoke about earlier, that's where all their deer goes back into. It goes into a couple of major meatworks plants, and then it goes a lot of it gets exported or goes back into the food chain here in the UK. So but certainly in southern England and the area Mark touched on earlier, where we saw those large herds of fallow deer, and that's the place that neighbours, adjoining motorways, the road traffic incidents with deer is quite high in the UK, especially in the winter months from now through till mid-March time. Another very important reason for having to control the numbers and population. And as soon as like any animal, like a pig run that's beat or anything, as soon as they bust through a fence and know they've got a means of crossing the motorway to another block of forestry or what have you, they'll tend to run that path each day as part of their beat. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people driving around the countryside too. So there's regular call outs, and by means of doing that course I mentioned, the deer course, once you've done one of those and you're certified as such, you can then pass your details on to the local authorities who, when there's road traffic incidences like that, you can get a call out of the blue asking you to go and attend it and dispatch the animal. So the police can't do that on site, so they'll call you out and you dispatch and dispose of the carcass then from the animal. So yeah, it's a little different, I suppose, in what we're used to hunting at home and, going out with your backpack or camping and going for a weekend shooting or hunting in the countryside at home. It's, it takes a different light, I suppose, in this environment over here. Different, no one better than the other. Both got their pros and cons. But, yeah.
Yeah, but that process you talk about of getting a call out to an injured animal, what a great way to create advocacy for the hunter, helping the general population out, that stresses a lot of people out. They run into an animal, they've smashed their car up, there's, a half dead thing on the side of the road that, they don't know how to deal with. There's not too many people who are going to crack it on the head with a tire iron. Being able to call someone to do that is, that's a good service.
It is, mate. It is, and you're very right. I've only been called out twice, and I got my certificate nearly 4 years ago now. I've only been called out twice in all that time, and both times were young ladies, and both didn't really know what to do. And understandably, look, they've just one of them had hit a reasonable sized Seeker stag, and he would have gone growlicked and head off at somewhere around low 70 kilos in weight. So, with all his bits intact, he's a mid 80 kilo animal and hitting the front end of a relatively small car on a dark country lane at night time. It's for a young lass or a new driver on the road to have that happen to them is what do you do? They don't teach that stuff at school, do they? So
no, I was going to say, is it inappropriate to show up to an incident like that with a big smile on your face, looking at the head that you're about to take home? Like, I'm sorry, love, about your car. Holy Jesus!
Yeah,
you got to control yourself. That's right. Can you take a selfie for me?
Yeah.
Exactly. Just hold this camera for me. Perfect. Yeah, just to get away from get the trees behind us. That's it, love. Take the photo. Perfect.
There's an English comedy episode here somewhere.
Yeah. Look, and like you say, I think with the spotlight on hunting in general at the moment globally, not just here, I think it's nice for, as you remarked, it's nice for hunters to be able to give something back to the community and another means of being able to help out there. So, that's all's well that ends well, I guess, mate. So,
I know from my personal experience that difference does take some getting used to. I remember that we were on the farm hunting with Ian, hunting for the muntjac, and I don't ever take gear over. Only, as I said, I've got my personal gear that I take over, but I basically leave everything here. So I'm borrowing gear, and I think I was shooting a right hand 270 off sticks with the suppressor. Ian, I think it was your rifle or Ian's, I can't remember, but the standard process over there is chambered round with safety on. So I'm sitting there on these sticks. Out comes the muntjac doe, runs across, and here comes the buck. So the first thing I do is I pick the rifle off the sticks. So this, Ian kind of goes, "No, mate," back on the sticks, and then second thing I do is I basically cycle the action and eject out a perfectly good barn onto the ground. Everyone's going, "What are you doing?" Oh, sorry. And then managed to get all that on a right-hand rifle on left-hand shoulder and hit that, and somehow managed to hit that munty. But yeah, it's really quite interesting when you hunt in a wholly different environment, and not only is the environment different, but also the way people go around hunting and the processes. It's really, whilst for me at the time, obviously it was funny because we still got the deer anyway. It really was an eye opener that there's not just one way of doing this, and there's no like, oh, that's the way we hunt here, so that's the correct way. There's a whole range of ways that are the correct way depending on the circumstance you find yourself in the culture, and even right down to the way that people approach safety with rifles and things like that. So I've always really enjoyed that part of the experience of going to the UK. And I know that you've had a little bit of exposure to Scotland and also Europe. So do you see the differences in how people hunt in England to how they hunt in Scotland and even over into Europe as well?
Oh, most definitely, yeah. And as you say, right back to the safety element of it. It's where we were stalking with you was relatively well. That particular property you mentioned is a relatively small hold. Opportunities are fleeting for deer. You've got often at times seconds, not minutes or time to plan a stalk and what have you. You know, the opportunity with muntjac, a few of us refer to them like they're a bit like the Viet Cong, mate. You can be walking along and all of a sudden the little buggers just jump out of the timber and they're there. Then seconds later they're gone again. You know what I mean? What's going on here? But they're a funny little critter the first time you see them. So you've got to approach that, you know, all systems ready to go. And in the safest way possible when you're in that environment. You know, whoever's carrying the rifle will always walk first. Typically, and the bloke that's with you, if you've got a guide or someone along with you, will carry your sticks normally. And as soon as you see an animal, no different to anyone who's hunted plains game or anything in Africa, will drop your sticks down roughly in the right position. You'll drop the rifle on the sticks and away you go. Now that changes pretty drastically, even just in the UK. So anything on the open hill in Scotland, I would never have a chambered round as such, because you've got time. You're up there. You've spied your animals and you've planned your stalk. And from the first time sighting of those, it could be a couple of hours till you've worked yourself into that right position where you're in a position to take the beast. So there is no benefit whatsoever to having a chambered round in that situation, and that's often the same. Some of the higher country in Wales, where there's some good goats to be shot and the odd rough sheep over there to be shot as well. Same situation. Wherever time is afforded, I suppose we'd still recommend that there's not a chambered round in the rifle. Now that changes drastically. Move over the continent with your driven shooting. Well, the first thing you do when you get on the stand, when that whistle goes, is one up the spout and safety on, and it's firearm pointing in a safe direction for the duration of that drive until the whistle or the horn goes off at the end, and then you take that chambered round out of the cartridge. Out of the chamber and away you go. So yeah, a little different. It does change different countries, and often there's the language barrier as well, which at times is challenging to overcome. He's telling you to do one thing and you're doing the opposite most of the time. So yeah, I think, look, safety first, and as we're all taught from kids, it's a mechanical safety on a rifle's the last resort, really. So safety's by way of us approaching it, and how we safely handle the firearm, pointing in safe direction, all those good things that are entrenched, I guess, over time. But yes, very fair to say, different regions, different species, and different situations you're approaching very differently, and every guide's got their different way too. So some guides would prefer, as soon as you step out of the truck in the morning, you drop one in the chamber and safety on, and others will often say we won't chamber around until we're in a position to make the final approach into our target species. So yes, mate, it at times does change. The gear, on the gear side, the gear's much the same to what you guys are used to at home and come accustomed to. The caliber's often the same. Changes a little bit in Europe, but in the UK we shoot predominantly all the same stuff that's on the shelves, gun shop shelves at the home is widely available here, with the addition of suppressors.
And with shotguns too, that shotgunning, that's also really an eye-opener, the different styles of shotgun. I mean, and again, I've had the opportunity with you and with other people to do a whole range of styles. We've got that. I remember that driven hunt we went on to up there in York. It was the Tweeds. We had the breakfast beforehand. The shoot captain gave us a rundown. We all drove around in Range Rovers every time. I always found it really interesting that how much grog we drank whilst in the company of shotguns. But anyway, that was the modus operandi. You did after every shoot, it's a drink after and all that kind of on the pegs, the clothing, the tradition, the whole process, the amount of people involved too. The fact that it's just not a shoot captain and a number of shots or a number of guns. It's the drives, it's the people with the dogs, and the fact that You don't pick, if you shoot a bird, you don't touch it. That's a picker-upper's job, and all that kind of the real interest around that. And then we did the farm shoot, which was kind of like a more relaxed version of that, which was we basically walked around a farm, and there was some drives and there was some static shots, and then that afternoon we spent walking around a farm with a couple of guys with auto loaders, just basically seeing what we could scare up and shooting pheasants as they came off the water and all sorts of things. So you get a whole range of experience of what hunting and especially what shooting can be. And whilst again you go back to the fact that it's a very small country and it's a very high population density, there is also a lot of different things to experience in that very small space. The way that people approach the different parts of the shooting game is very, very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Yeah, very, very fair comment. It's what we've talked about so far is mainly the rifles and shooting larger game, so to speak, and centered around deer. But the other side of the sport and the industry over here is the birds, and driven birds is just one type of shooting, as you're saying. Driven shooting, I think I probably did a poor job of touching on it earlier, but there's a bit of controversy around it at the moment. There's a lot of finger pointing going on by the Greens and all the other parties, and the thought of rearing birds each season to be released and then shot doesn't sit well with everyone. But that's deeply entrenched in English history. So that goes a long, long way back, and I'm possibly wrong, but I believe I'm right in saying that I think driven shooting first started at Holcombe Estate over in Norfolk, which is the home of the bowler hat as well, for anyone that's into their hats. But yeah, that's the first place they started, using teams of people to drive birds over standing guns, and their driven shooting or shooting off pegs was born. And if, again, much like Scotland with the deer, if anyone gets an opportunity to be a part of a driven day, and that's not just shooting, if they come to the UK and they're interested in the outdoors and seeing how a driven day unfolds, it's a wonderful event to go and experience. And as Mark touched on it, the amount of money that driven shooting brings to the local economy is just unbelievable. It's valued into the billions now, not hundreds of millions, but billions now that it brings each year. And the teams of people, commercial driven shoots a little different to the one that Mark touched on. We went on up in Yorkshire, which is one of the homes of driven shooting in the UK. They've got amazing topography up there, and they can throw some of the highest birds in the country, and it's a pretty special place. But on days like that, it's not uncommon to all meet at the site, which is often a stately home of sorts, or an estate home on an estate, and you'll have the shoot captain for the day, and certainly the gamekeeper will normally deliver a speech in the morning, and you might have a team of between 8 and 12 guns are normally shooting. Quite often those guns, depending on where you're at, will have loaders as well that are loading for them through the day. So there's another 8 or 12 people. You can have a team. Your gamekeeper team is often 4 to 10 gamekeepers on a lot of shoots. Then you've got pickers up, which are often people from the local community that bring their dogs out. So typically trained, Labradors and Retrievers, as well as your spaniels, and they will stand often behind the guns. And after a bird drops, they'll send the dogs out to pick up the birds, so to speak. And then driving the birds, you've got a team of beaters, which again is young kids and people just generally interested in the outdoors that want a bit of exercise on the weekend. And they walk and flank in birds from all different angles around typically a large timbered area with their flags, and they drive the birds into a position where they start to lift and push back over the guns that are waiting down on their pegs. And so it's fair in a commercial shoots are even larger again, but in your average side state shoot around the country, you'll often involve upward of 30 to 40 people just in a shoot day, and it's really lovely environment being part of all that. Hospitality plays a big part in it, and the day is often started by a full cooked breakfast, and then you'll go on to a series of these drives throughout the day. Or alternatively, you often have 2 or 3 of these drives, breaking for 11sies or smoko, and 11 o'clock at the end of one drive, they'll lay on a table with some nice yeah, nice couple of drinks and sharp ones in the morning and some food, and then you'll break for a full sit down, couple 2, often 3-course lunch before going out and enjoying the afternoon's drive. So, yeah, look, they all unfold and they're all run slightly differently, but the way you go about it's the same. A gun on the day turns up, and here's what's on the cards, what can be shot, how the day is going to unfold, and then very traditionally you tend to draw your peg for the day. And you go around, and this is all undertaken in a bit of, it's not a ceremony, but it's almost like a ceremony in the way that the day starts, and have a beverage and draw your peg, and that's the peg that you start your first drive on. And then each drive through the day, the gun will move up, normally up 2 pegs or sometimes up 3 pegs. So start on 1, you'll go up to peg 3 or 4 on the next drive, and so on throughout the day, which is just changing your position on, on the line of guns, so to speak, as every drive goes on, and your opportunity. So yeah, it's very different. The first time you go on one of these events, certainly as a gun, it's a little almost daunting, I suppose. You don't really know exactly what's going on until it all starts to unfold, and next thing you know, you've got pheasants with their wings spread and set and sailing over you at some height, and you're trying to pull them down. So it's a wonderful experience. If you enjoy bird shooting, it's absolutely fantastic way to experience, and grouse even more so. I've not shot driven grouse yet, and it's a very expensive pastime to be involved in. So we won't touch too much on the cost, but yeah, it costs a bloody lot of money to go on a day's driven grouse shooting. However, I've been fortunate.
I was going to ask, and not that I want to go into cost too much. But you said the word billions earlier, and I'm listening intently, but also madly trying to punch out 1 billion divided by 200,000 hunters equals $5,000 a hunter, per year expense going into shooting birds. If you do it that way, obviously there's more people other than those on the guns that are involved in this whole process. It's not just 10 blokes with guns. There's all of the entourage and everyone else that's around it. What's the percentage of gun holders in a day's driven bird shooting compared to those that aren't with guns?
Yeah, that depends slightly on the size of the shoot. But typically, if you went on a nice local shoot, they call it a 200 bird day, that are usually held on a 1,000 to 2,000 acre property, would normally generate that sort of day. There'd be 8 to 10 guns, depending on time of year. And typically in that size of a day, 25 to 30 people behind the scenes, putting that day on. But when I comment on billions, that's what it brings to the local economy, not just the direct shooting side of it, but it's the hotels and the nights before. It's local supermarkets, the grog, the whole lot.
It's the same with our hunting. Exactly the same when we're cruising down to New South Wales and buying fuel and buying food and spending our money in those towns. It's really important. It's just a big number that just went, wow, that's they're big numbers for the small amount of licensed gun holders there. There's obviously a lot more to that, clearly, but that's all right. So without getting into too much of the cost, I was keen on that before you went on to grouse, but grouse becomes it's a different story again.
Oh, definitely, yeah. I can give you a rough idea. So the going rate on a partridge day, most estates tend to charge by the bird. So, and the going rate this season is £37 a bird plus VAT. So that's what the charge is to the gun shooting. Now you do the math. If you're on a 300 bird day, that sort of cost. That's where you start to see the average peg you're spending a couple of grand just to stand on the peg and shoot for the day, plus.
And that cost is the hunters, is the shooters. There's not cost to the other 20 odd people around them. The support people.
No, they're often paid. So and the guns will pay them by way of tips at the end of the day, or that charge per bird. Then the gamekeepers, that's their full-time job. So that they're paid by the estate as a contract farmer, or anyone would be in that sense. You'll often have a team of the cooks or the chef and what have you that are associated with the estate as well, and it's just part of their job is turning on the hunt days. The beaters and the pickers up that come along can earn typically between £20 and £50 a day, is what they make as their wage, depending on what their duties might be. And a lot of them aren't even interested really in the shooting. It might be that they like to work their dogs and train their dogs in retrieving. It might just be like they like their exercise, and it's a great way of getting exercise when you're walking tens of miles, pushing and flanking in birds and all sort of country as well. But yeah, that's about where the costs of a pheasant day are. If you work on that, £37 a bird plus VAT. So what are we looking at there? Just over 70 Aussie dollars plus the VAT. Call it $85 Australian to shoot one bird. So you can see how these days quickly escalate. Grouse is often charged then by the brace, so 2 birds as opposed to singly. And I think the rate this season's gone up slightly to just over £120 a brace plus VAT. So yeah, you start breaking that down again, you're at 120, 135, 140 Aussie dollars a single bird to shoot. So
and it's probably unkosher to take your 2 and say, thanks fellas, I've had enough.
Most definitely. No, you are expected to be there and try and fill the bag that's available on that day. So yeah, look, it's not for everyone in that sense. It's not everyone can sort of afford that sort of money. And but look, there's a long English gentry, shall we say, that each season partake in numerous of these days at costs of £2,000 and £3,000 to upwards of £6,000 and £7,000 a day to stand on a peg and shoot driven birds. But no, the grouse is pretty special to see, mate. It's happens in the north of England and up the borders and into Scotland. Grouse are a fantastic bird when they fly. They're very, very fast bird. They don't gain the height vertically that your pheasants do. But grouse are short, stocky bird. They come out and often just go hell for leather, parallel to the ground, straight back through the guns and between the guns, and it's very exciting, high speed action. So pretty neat kind of stuff. That's your main driven that's done there. I touched on partridge and pheasant. A lot of shoots will put both birds down, partridge and pheasant. Pheasant fly differently. If conditions are right, pheasants will lift vertically quite high out of the timber and then find a line and then travel on that line as they progress to a surrounding wood, and hopefully that's over the top of the line of the guns, and they'll often lift in numbers. Your partridge tend to be in their coveys, and they'll come out in a little covey of birds together, and that can be anything from 4 or 5 birds to 20 plus, depending on whether they're English or European partridge, and they fly slightly differently, and they fly lower than a pheasant and move a fair bit quicker. A pheasant, once he's up and sets his wings, he tends to maintain the same line as they come on through, whereas a partridge can jink a little bit more and tip their wings and really roll with the topography of the land and or the wind up their backside or into their head, depending on which way it's going. So yeah, they're different birds to shoot, and the approach and how you address each one changes slightly, but that's driven shooting. It's very exciting. You can be stood on the peg and for a drive can go from anything from 10 to 15 minutes through to half an hour plus, 40 minutes plus even on the big shoots. And you can be stood there with not a whole lot of action, and then all of a sudden you've got birds coming as fast as you can load that under and over. They're sailing over your head. So it's it can be frantic and a lot of fun at times. So. Nice way, and very, very different. I know it's starting to gain popularity in parts of Victoria and certainly Tassie. You've got a couple of commercial shoots now that are offering pheasant shooting over there, and I think it'll continue to gain popularity. And certainly you're seeing more keepers coming across from New Zealand as well now to learn the trade here in the UK and return home with estates and larger farms looking to put birds down in the coming years in Australia. So I think you will see that grow in popularity there. And but that's just one element of the bird shooting. Mark talked on earlier. Second and most popular is probably, for the masses and because the cost isn't there, is walked up shooting, often done over the top of your dog, or you're just picking a nice area of a local farm and you're walking the hedges on the farm or the edge of the timber, and you might send your dog in, and you often send your dog in if you've got a reasonable one, and he or she will push those birds up in front of you, and not too dissimilar to what the Americans call lowland shooting. They tend to do it with an auto gun and at pretty close ranges. We tend to try and do it here with the dogs. They often shoot over pointers in the US, is a lot more common. They'll point, hold, and the shots are often at 25 through 40 yards. Is pretty common in the lowland shooting over there. Here's a little different. You'll get a well-trained dog will work about 40 yards out in front of you. You'll let that bird rise and start to set off before looking at taking a shot there. And Mark's had the opportunity to experience a little bit of that when he was over, and it's there's a lot to be said for shooting over your dog if you've invested the time in training it and what have you, to see your dog working and putting those birds up and offering an opportunity to shoot that bird and go and pick it and retrieve it. It's bringing that connection all together, and you invest a lot of time trying to get him to work with you like that. And it's nice. It's lovely to watch a good trained dog. But yeah, that's a nice way to enjoy for the average chap that doesn't have a endless pocket, shall we say, to enjoy some pheasant or partridge shooting, is to do it walked up over the top of dogs. It's good fun. More reactive shooting, shall I say. You can, not so much from the hip, but I mean it happens a bit quicker. Driven shooting, you can often see the birds coming from a long ways out, and you've got time to set and approach your shot. Often, especially woodcock and some of the faster moving birds, if you get an opportunity to see them flush from their cover, they dart and they jink and they're moving at high speed. So it's more snap shooting, if you like. And again, different folks tend to prefer that too, but it offers something nice. And I think it's as I touched on with the deer, you can do a lot of walked up shooting just after work. You can literally go and walk the edge of a woodland and enjoy a bit of walked up on your way home of the night. So there's a nice opportunity to be able to do that, and with shotgun licenses easier to obtain, and land to shoot birds on much easier to obtain than land to shoot a rifle on for deer. It tends to be a really, really popular pastime, and now's the time of year. In addition, as I say, you've got your wildfowl season, which is not a lot different to at home. We don't have the inland lakes necessarily like you do in parts of Victoria and southern New South. But we certainly have nice coastal wildfowl shooting coming into the rivers and tributary systems, which offers excellent sport at times. But we get a lot of on the inland, on the ponds, and straight out the front of where our office is here is a set of fishing lakes. We're on about 1,000 acres here too, and a lovely set in the countryside. And on those lakes at the right time of year are geese. So we get hordes and hordes of Canada geese here. So we're fortunate that, after work in the season, we can go out and put up a couple of hides and get the geese up and flying, and enjoy a bit of goose shooting in the evening as well. And probably the of all the winged bird shooting as such in the UK, the one that's most people tend to venture towards is shooting pigeons.
Yeah, that's where my first experience shooting the UK was on pigeons. So that's, I suppose, to give it a description, that's a decoy shooting from a blind. So you set up a blind and you set up the various decoys, very much like ducks. Different types of decoy. And what you're trying to do is you're often over a crop field, and you're trying to bring the pigeons into the crop. It's often part of a pest management approach. So you are basically trying to cull pigeons on a crop, but it is it's a great way to shoot. As I said, it's like duck shooting, but of course it's over a crop rather than over a water, either a lake or a pond or a river or something like that. But boy, pigeon shooting is very, very fun.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. And it's as I say, I've not had the opportunity to shoot driven grouse, and those that have speak very, very highly of it. But pigeon shooting on a windy day are the most challenging birds I've ever lifted a gun to. They move quicker than the other birds we've just talked about. They jink, they turn, they never hold their lines. They're always moving all the time. And if you can get them on a day with a really, really strong crosswind and the property you're on's got some elevation, oh my goodness, your shot rate isn't fantastic. It makes good shooters look pretty ordinary. So they're great fun. First and foremost, the pigeon shooting here in the UK is done for crop protection, and that is part of our license. That it's how do I say? It's not a sensitive subject. We all enjoy it as a sport while we're out there doing it, but primarily that's what we're there to do, is to control them off the crops. So main times a year for pigeon shooting can vary, but they tend to be around either when crops are being harvested or you've just got seed coming through are the two key times that pigeon populations are high and need to control. unfortunately, the marksman over around that Christmas period the last couple of times has been in the UK, and it's not the greatest time of year for pigeon shooting, to be honest. The summertime, summertime period is by far bigger numbers. But right in saying that, yeah, the majority of it is done behind a blind and over a set of decoys that are staged out in the edge of the crop. And if you can coincide that with a flight line, what they know as a flight line, the line that pigeons normally transit on morning and afternoon, whether that be from a city nearby or from one prominent wood where they've roosted overnight, on venturing on to another prominent wood in the area. So if you can try and find that flight line, set up your decoys with the wind in your favour over crop that they might want to feed on. Yeah, it's some amazing shooting to be had, and a great way to learn how to shoot birds as well, how to lead birds, and yeah, it's how to swing your gun, move your gun properly, and also your posture, how to address birds properly and shoot them. So it's a really enjoyable pastime. And the other way to shoot pigeons is what they call just flight lining, and that's what we tend to do a lot of the time at this time of year. So you find often late in the afternoon, that 15-20 minutes just before sundown, the birds will start returning from either the crops where they've been feeding out in the countryside, from the local town or city, and they'll return to those roosting when they tend to roost in those major wooded areas. And if you can set yourself inside the roosted area on a flight line, then you're shooting single birds often that are coming up at some height, and they offer fantastic challenge as well to roost shoot those. And that's the same with crows. So we shoot the crows exactly the same way that we shoot the pigeons. So same thing over decoys. So set up crow decoys out in the field and shoot them like that, especially around harvest time, or roost shoot crows as they're returning to nest in the evening as well. So yeah, it's very enjoyable. Often there's a lot of banter often, and it's a very sociable event because you can fit 2 or 3 of you in a hide, and yeah, pulling the mick out of each other on an afternoon's pigeon shooting is hard to beat. So yeah, it's good fun.
Yeah, it's certainly. Yeah, it's probably one of the, for a visitor, it's certainly the, if you can find a guide who does pigeon shooting, it's a very economical way to get into having some fun. And for me, what I most like about it is use auto loaders. When the driven shoots with their tradition, they frown upon, and I mean when they frown upon, that is they don't let you use things like auto loaders. But the pigeon guys, not a problem. So you get to play around with some very nice auto loaders while you're whacking pigeons. It's quite an enjoyable afternoon. I remember the first time I did, I was shooting with Jonathan, actually, who we're going to have on the podcast, and he said, "Why are you putting 3 shots into every pigeon?" And I said, "Because I can. Because I've got it in my hand, I can do it." So, boom, boom, boom. And when I did that one day, that walk around, I was using that little 20 gauge Remington autoloader. That was a lovely little shotgun. I'll tell you something. I wish we could get those here. It's a wonderful little thing to own, and it was just a joy to use. So certainly the pigeon shooting, I actually find the pigeon shooting really enjoyable, as you said, because it's very sociable. You're in that blind. Here they come, quick, don't look up, don't show your face. You scared them off, and you're going too early and stuff like that, because they will. They're birds that suffer from predation. They're very aware of what's going on. They can see your face looking at them from a long way away, and any kind of movement, they'll flare, they'll jink, they'll pull out of the dive, the whole lot. So it's really good fun pigeon shooting from a blind. Really good fun.
It is, yeah, definitely. You touched on a couple of points there. The auto loaders, under our license in the UK, they've got to be restricted to a maximum of 3 shots. You can get a higher capacity, but like New Zealand, well, I don't know if it still is, but like New Zealand was, to get a greater capacity is a higher class of license, so to speak. And to have a 5, 7, 10 shot auto loader has to go on your firearms license here in the UK. So for that reason, the majority of autos here are 3 shots. So 2 in the mag tube and 1 in the chamber, so to speak. But yeah, it's good fun and opens up a different type of firearm than we're used to shooting it back at home in Australia. And secondly, when we talk about visitors, again, if you come into the UK in summertime, it's the most accessible way to get into shooting is source the services of a local guide who can put you on nice land, they'll set up your hide for you and get you all ready to go, and often sit with you. But it's relatively inexpensive. You can expect to pay 100, 120 quid for half a day's shooting out in the field on pigeons. So a couple $100, 250 bucks Aussie. It's very reasonable for in this day and age, and plus some cartridge costs on top of that, just depending on how many cartridges you shoot. But very, very affordable. Good use of a natural resource and way of controlling it and doing something for the farmer as well. So that's a good fun. Certainly good fun.
Well, it's a very detailed look at what the UK has to offer. There seems to be a hell of a lot more than I knew about. Not that I've been there to hunt. I've been over a few times now. I've seen some animals, and you see a lot in social media. You don't get the feel for it really by looking at it on social media. I did watch one video of a guy that went over and did a driven hunt, and it looked amazing. Very, very well, completely different, but similar in the community style, I guess, as to some of the hound hunters down in Victoria. They make a lifestyle out of it, and it's a real community sort of approach. So it'll be a really interesting one to get in amongst next time I'm over there. When COVID lets us get across the borders and onto planes and traveling again, it'll be a really interesting one.
Yeah, definitely, mate. I think that's fair to say. A lot of the UK, or often a lot of places outside of Australia, when you're travelling, the opportunities are often unrecognised till you get to the country and immerse yourself in the people, the lifestyle, and then all of these things start to become apparent. But very fair to say that there are a lot of really good shooting opportunities in the UK. You got to dig a little, you got to talk to the right people, but it's in a densely populated area, relatively few shooters, and it's a relatively tight-knit community, not unlike Australia in a lot of ways. So, no, some nice opportunities to be had here. Very varied opportunities. It's you can be pigeon shooting in the afternoon, deer stalking first light the next morning, and then the right time of year, have a flight of geese or ducks in the afternoon too. You can do that all within the space of 15 miles from your local pub, where you can enjoy a beverage that night. So, no, man.
Yeah, that sounds like it. Before we wrap up, and outside of all of the conversation about UK hunting, what's next for Steve? What's on your list of things that you'd like to achieve over the next couple of years, borders being open and being allowed to do so?
First, we've had to postpone a trip to Kyrgyzstan at the moment, so I'm busting to get over to Kyrgyzstan at the moment. One of our guys that works for us, Tomo, over in Europe's got a really nice guiding and outfitting operation on the side of the work he does with us, and I'm busting to get up in the high country there, mate. It's going to get very difficult in parts of mid-Asia and Eastern Europe to start chasing Marco Polo. There's some really incoming tough licenses. There's going to be fewer opportunities and tickets available to outfitters as well. So it's a shame because they can't drastically link that to population at the moment. So it's just a stance that a few of the governments have made, and it's been supported, unfortunately. So I'd love to get over there and certainly do that. And we should be over there about a week ago, to be honest. So all being well, when the borders open up properly and some sort of normality returns, that's high on the priority list, mate. And I'm working towards. I've got a few work trips to do to the US next year as well. So I'd like to put in a backcountry hunt for elk as well. Is high on the list. So abroad, they're the next two hunts that I'll be on, hopefully in 2022. And locally, I'm fortunate that I've acquired a bit more land around us here in the Midlands. So there's more deer shooting opportunities there. I'm chasing a Seeker stag. I've got my other 5 bucks and stags. So he's the last one I need. One of those road traffic accidents I mentioned earlier was actually a Seeker stag, but I'm not sure I can count that.
You might be able to, but deep down you won't do it.
Exactly, yeah. Let's just say his head's in the garage, not on the wall in the house. But nonetheless, I'd like to try and track him down if I can. So, but that's it. It's been. I think moving across the world, it's been head down, bum up on the work side, and make a name and do the right things to offer that stability for family. And all those other important things in life. So I like a lot of us, the last couple of years haven't had as many opportunities as I would like to have or would usually have to get out there hunting. But yeah, look, families, kids are growing up a little bit more at the moment. As you say, COVID opening back up. Been in the job a little while now, so yeah, naturally opportunities become more readily available. But look, busting to get home as well. Yeah, it's been a couple of years since I've been back home. Busting to get back home, see the family, friends, and yeah, go and chase some piggies around Mooney, Moree, up in that country too. So.
Oh, well, make sure you look us up when you get back up this direction. Passing through the Darling Downs, we might be able to sort something out for you too. We're starting to get a little bit excited that our borders in Queensland are going to open up for us sometime in the next couple of weeks. So we hit a certain percentage number of vaccinated people. So we've got, I think we've got seven hunts booked for our local hunting club, and we're just hoping that we can cross the border and attack those. So anyway, I'm sure I'm sure you'll have the same dream. Hoping that you can get overseas. So that's been really good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, likewise, mate, if you're ever over this side of the pond, then just hang out. There's a few bits of the English countryside we'd love to show you, and yeah, a few critters that you wouldn't mind seeing in your sights, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Thank you for that. Mark?
Oh, look, I mean, it's been a funny one because all I'm thinking about is, so are we going next Christmas or are we going? I'm just planning what Christmas 2022, 2023 is looking like. Certainly, there's certain things I want to do, but and not only the hunting. I want to catch up with good friends face to face. Steve being one of them, you know. But certainly, it has been. I was actually surprised when you said you've been there for 6 years. Because you know, I kind of thought, oh, it's been a couple of years. No, it's been a while. So yeah, that really threw me.
Yeah.
We've been hunting together for a while now, so that's it. But certainly, what I found by having the time to hunt somewhere like England, and be it England or be it New Zealand or anywhere else around the world, is that there is opportunity there. You've just got to realize that you're not looking at it through the same lens. You've got to look through the lens of where you're at, and once you get your head around that, and also not being, I suppose, strong-willed enough to actually accept that people do things completely differently to where you come from. If you can get your head around that, there's an abundance of hunting opportunities wherever you go. That one thing I haven't done so far in England is I haven't fished. I really want to have a go. Actually, that's true. No, I did have a fish in '96. Have a fish in '96, but I haven't had a fish for a while. So I'd actually like to have a fish over there as well, because there's certain species I'd like to target there as well. So for a small place, there's lots of opportunities, and as I said, there's some great networks over there. So mate, I really appreciate you taking the time. I would have liked to hear a little bit about where you're at now, but I suppose we've come to a natural conclusion.
Yeah, look, we've tried to skirt around and cover a fair bit in one topic, but by all means, guys, if there's an opportunity later date, we can talk about industry and gear and the movements and where that's going over the next period of time. Absolutely. And yeah, I'd close. Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity and having me on board. And I guess just to reiterate on what Mark said there for any of the listeners, if you're venturing to the UK and Europe, I would recommend approaching your hunting opportunities with just an open mind. We've all done a little bit. We've all got some experiences here and there. But if you approach each hunt with an open mind and the people that you're going to meet, the cultures that you can immerse yourself in, there are some fabulous opportunities. And we all become a little bit more learned and enjoy these new experiences. It's not a bad thing.
Seems like a good way to thank you. So thanks very much for your time, buddy. I really appreciate it.
You're most welcome. Good to see you guys. Look after yourself.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, mate.